It's time for 41 is the Mic, a weekly Chiefs podcast with Nick Jacobs of KSHB 41 and Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. 41 is the Mic starts now.
Yes, everyone, that's right. Welcome to 41 is the Mic. I am Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest, alongside from KSHB 41, preseason enthusiast Nick Jacobs. Nick, the pads are on, and we get I was going to say exhibition. It's not exhibition. Preseason football this weekend, Nick.
Yeah, that's right. It's a big week all around, Matt. Okay, August is here. Football is back in a lot of ways at the college level. High school will join the party here within another week or two, and depending on which state you live in, from our coverage area. So it is going to be full swing between now until hopefully February. There will be football in my life for all that time.
Yes, and between now and really, like you said, February, only going to be 2 weekends without football. Well, 1 weekend without football because there's always the Pro Bowl. So I guess that's football. I mean, I don't really count it, Nick, because I'm never paying attention to the Pro Bowl because there's other stuff going on and the Chiefs are usually busy. So it doesn't really catch my attention. And you get the week off before week one, but even then the Chiefs are going to be practicing that weekend, getting ready for their Thursday night season opener. So we're here. We are at the point where we are going to have football every single week, Nick. And this week we saw, on Sunday we started seeing the Chiefs start actually do a little game planning. Getting ready for the season, not the preseason, because you don't really game plan for the preseason. Nothing you got to really prepare for because you're not going to be showing the Jacksonville Jaguars anything on Saturday night. You're just going to be kind of going out there and running some vanilla offense and defense. But we got to see the Chiefs, mimic a little bit of Baltimore Ravens on Sunday, Nick.
Is that what they were doing, Matt?
You think so?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Chris Oladokun was wearing number 8.
Maybe.
Well, we got to see some football this weekend, Nick. We talked a little bit about what we saw, for the first couple days of the week on Tuesday night on our live stream on Chiefs Digest, but. We've still had quite a bit of football since then, Nick. What has really stood out to you, over the last maybe 5 days up at camp?
Yeah, I mean, we got to see 3 additional padded practices. So you and I have got to see 6 total at this point. So I feel like we're in a really good spot in terms of where the offensive line's at, where the defensive line's at, kind of seeing contact as well and seeing guys hit and seeing things of that nature. So, I mean, in that front, I feel, I feel a lot more comfortable with evaluating those position groups and kind of where they're at and where everything's going. I would say in a general perspective overall, Deneric Prince is really kind of taken that RB3 spot, if not kind of working in part of RB2. Like he showed up in pass protection this week. He had a really strong performance in pass protection. He made some catches. He had the leaping grab that I put on social media. That was a good one. And I mean, he's been working out with the first team offense, getting some catches from Mahomes, working a little bit, I believe, with Wentz at times, depending on what type of drill they were doing. So Deneric's really kind of taking that next step that he needed to. Nikko Remigio continues to shine, continues to showcase what he's capable of. Linebacker, I'm going to mention Curtis Jacobs. Like, I'm curious to see him in preseason because of how athletic he is, how strong he was, some of the stuff he was doing, the way he was rushing and pass protection. He's a strong, stout, athletic linebacker that, depending on what he puts on tape coming up here, in the preseason, I think will determine if the Chiefs think they can stash him. I don't think they're going to be able to. I think he's going to make a lot of plays in preseason, whether it's on special teams or in the defense. So, I mean, those were 3 people that initially kind of jumped out to me. I'll have some more, but I don't want to take the dance floor for too long. So, Matt, what about yourself? What's some things that stuck out to you?
Well, I'm gonna ask you. I'm gonna put you on the spot, Nick. I'm gonna ask you the same challenging question that I asked Andy Reid the other day, and he didn't exactly punt on it because I think in Andy Reid speak he answered it. But we saw it. I mean, here we are. We're on August 4th, Nick. And, this was on August 1st. You saw Kingsley Suamataia taking first team reps at left tackle, and you saw Wanya Morris playing left guard.
Yep.
Is there any scenario where you're starting left tackle in week 1 on August 1st is at left guard and the backup is the one playing left tackle? Is this position battle fight over and Kingsley has won it?
I would say what the preseason game number 1 will answer that question. I think they kind of want to see. I think they want to give him as many reps as possible against the Chris Joneses, the Mike Danas, the George Karlaftises of the world, because that's what he's going to experience on a regular basis. That's what we've talked about in the Q&A podcast before. That's what he needs to get better. That's what he needs to succeed. That's what he needs to be seen so that he can raise his game to that standard, raise his technique to that level, and continue working on that during camp here. So, I mean, that the most important thing they're doing is giving reps to him. Wanya's had some of those reps. He doesn't necessarily need them at left tackle right now as much as Kingsley does for them to evaluate what Suamataia can do. Wanya long-term, I think he's probably going to end up being more of a guard long-term. And I think we've said that on a previous show before. And so that's why I wasn't surprised that the Chiefs put him there, because the biggest thing for Wanya right now is he doesn't have necessarily the strength you want him to have to be on an island. For him to be a part of a combo block, for him to be a part of a tandem and be a part of the interior, I think that is where he has more of a chance to shine right now in his career. And I just think from a functional strength perspective, Wanya is going to be more effective on an interior side where he has people around him than him getting put on an island, because I saw too many times in 6 practices that he would, the way he still lunged like he did in games last year. And that causes problems for a franchise quarterback on his blind side whenever that continually happens. So until that's fixed, I'm always going to be nervous that if they don't have a tight end or a running back kind of keeping tabs on that and helping out or chipping or whatever they would have to do on that side. And the thing with Kingsley, like I saw him when I was watching him today and some of the other previous days, look, when they had him go out and pull like Eric Fisher used to on some of those runs that they've had him do this week, he's got it. Like, he can get out into space and he can move and he can stay right there with the running back. And for a guy his size to be able to do that, that's something you mark down and you keep note of, because Orlando Brown couldn't do that. Orlando Brown couldn't even beat the running back to a trap. Kingsley can. Kingsley can pull. He can get out of space. He has all the athletic ability that you would want a franchise tackle to have. He's got quicker feet than what he showed on tape, so he's worked on that. And then also, like I said, he can, like the way he was lead blocking for Pacheco on some of those pulls that he did. Like, I mean, that was something that stuck in my brain, and I'm like, there, finally, they got another tackle that athletically can do that.
Yeah, the only thing I've noticed, and it's nitpicking, that I've noticed with Kingsley, is that I think the toughest thing for him to pick up, and it's the toughest thing for any left tackle, rookie left tackle, anybody new coming into the Chiefs, is the screen game. That's the only thing that I feel like that has been more effective when either the Chiefs are throwing it on the right side with Taylor over there, or even working with the second line. I mean, especially when you've had Wanya, if he's been playing left tackle there, that's tough. I mean, let's face it. I mean, and the screen game is all timing, so that's something that has to get picked up and everything. But like I said, that to me, that's nitpicking. I mean, I think for the most part, sure, that Kingsley's been holding up. And to your point, I mean, this right now is the time for evaluation. After that first preseason game is when you start to get the divergence from evaluation to getting guys ready for the beginning of the season. So, we see it every year, Nick. We see that workloads change after the first preseason game, and now guys that look like, okay, we need to see what they've got, we learned in the preseason game, maybe they're not ready yet. So they drop off and other guys get playing time. And I wonder, you mentioned Deneric Prince, and I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, you look at the workload that he's been getting during this training camp. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to tell you that he's not the number 2 running back right now, because he's been taking number 2 running back reps. Clyde's been sometimes taking number 4, even number 5 running back reps. But I feel like at the same time, that is more. Chiefs know what they've got in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They want to see these other guys. They want to evaluate Deneric Prince, but they also, they want to see what Carson Steele can do. They want to see what Amani Bailey can do. They want to see what Keontae Ingram can do. And after this game next week, we're probably going to see a different workload at running back.
Yeah. You'll see it during the preseason game, and whoever kind of really shines, they may get some chances in the 2 and 3 spots, maybe even the 4 spot. But after the first preseason game, you said it perfectly, is like that Monday practice after the preseason game, like this person's moved to this spot, this person's moved to this spot. Then that tells you like where they see this team going. So like you get a good feel for somebody you may need to move on a 53 spot that maybe you thought was lower, now they're higher, and then somebody you thought was higher that now potentially is lower. But the players are going to get the opportunity with their reps to kind of decide where they are on that pecking order.
Yeah, and the one side, I was thinking, just to wrap it up on the offensive side before we move over to the defensive side of the ball. I mean, to me, there's no question. I mean, who the top 3 receivers on this team are going to be. I think that when Justin Watson's back healthy, he's going to be the number 4, and there seems to be no rush to get him back. I mean, Justin Watson brings his helmet to practice every day like he's going to work, and he doesn't. And I think a lot of that is, once again, it's the same thing with Joe Thuney. Joe Thuney is working during the install, and that's it. I would expect that to probably start to change next week, but they're wanting to get a lot of other guys some reps and evaluate them. Once again, what you have in Justin Watson, so let him get right. Let him get to be 100% right. But you get into that group, and there's about 11 different receivers, Nick, that I count taking first-team reps. From 5 to 11, Chiefs are going to keep 2, maybe 3 of those guys. And I'll be honest, I mean, I did a 53 the other day with my best guess. I can't tell you which one of those 2 or 3 are going to make the team, because it is still wide open.
Yeah, and that's not a knock on somebody not stepping up. It's that there are guys stepping up and trying to take advantage of that, and realizing that their time playing football in Kansas City may be coming to an end if they don't showcase what they need to. So yeah, guys are some of those guys there that you're talking about, maybe at that 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 spot, they're all very conscientious of where they potentially could end up being. And so yeah, the battle's going to be interesting between Remigio, Toney, if he gets back on the field, which is becoming far too common of a thing to say. And then Montreal Washington, other than the interception yesterday during 7-on-7, he's had a strong camp. And then obviously Justyn Ross has really been stepping up on a lot of the fade routes and some of that part. Like, it's a part of what his game has always been, but the fact he's being able to do that with Mahomes is obviously encouraging. But I'll be interested to see how many other routes they use Ross for, and if it's outside of the red zone.
Yeah, and obviously Mecole Hardman's still there. And I'll tell you, Nick, I mean, I was speaking to someone today about the wide receiver spot, and the person told me that, that when they're having their coaches or having their meetings, one of the guys they're talking about having a really good camp is Skyy Moore. And, I mean, we don't get to see everything. We see about 2 hours a day of practice. These coaches get to see 13 hours a day with these players, so they get much more evaluation. So even if there's things about Skyy that still concern me and worry me, hey, they get to know these players a whole lot better than that. And the fact is, you look at there, and Skyy Moore's getting plenty of opportunities. He's getting chances. And he also, I think, is making the most of them. I mean, I'm not saying that everything from the last 2 years has been cleaned up, but Skyy, talking to us on Sunday, I mean, he sounded pretty confident. I mean, he sounded like a guy who's making this team. I'm not certain that he is, but he seems to believe he is.
He certainly talked like it, but I've watched enough practices to know that if I was the one calling the shot, there's still a lot more to be desired. But hey, we'll see what they do. I'm not doubting it either way because I've been surprised before and I'll be surprised again. But most of Skyy Moore's connection, in my opinion, has been with Carson Wentz, not with Patrick Mahomes. And we're now entering year 3, and it's still, if I'm having to choose Remigio or Skyy Moore, I'm choosing Remigio. But that's because I think Skyy and what he can do for this team is a specific set of skills that are backing up Rashee Rice, personally.
A specific set of skills. I got a little Liam Neeson thing going on there.
Yeah.
Going over to the defensive side of the ball, Nick, who's been kind of standing out to you? Is there anything on that side that really jumps out at you? Because I know there's going to be one thing we are going to talk about here in a little bit that is maybe the area of concern. So
at the defensive tackle spot, I watched that a lot this week, and I shot video of it this week. Mike Pennell, and I've said it before, I'm saying Mike Pennell and Chris Jones together, like the Chiefs starting offense, second team offense, it doesn't matter. They can't run on them because Mike Pennell is so strong and commands a double team. Like there was one play where, I mean, Trey Smith, it was funny. Chris Jones was going against Trey Smith, and Trey thought he had a chance, and then Chris just did the swim move to him and blew up the play in the backfield, and it was over. And like Trey is just like, what, where, like it wasn't, he did everything.
Where did it go? Yeah.
It's just Chris is so fast with his swim moves. Like this, there was no chance. And then the way Pennell was just holding up Trey and Creed, and then at times, you know, whether it was Caliendo at guard or Wanya Morris potentially working in, like, you know, Pennell's so strong, man. Like he's the key. But what people don't realize is Mike Pennell's the key to that run defense. Mike Pennell being the one tech on rundowns is the key to the Chiefs' run defense being effective and making sure Chris doesn't take on every single double team in the run game. Like that's what Mike Pennell brings to this table. And that's why I asked what I did at the press conference about him and Chris together, because I see it out there on a regular basis. That's why the Chiefs O-line interior can't run against them, is because Mike Pennell and Chris Jones are out there. So that's number one for me. I finally got a chance to kind of watch Neil Farrell more in depth, and he's stout enough to be able to hold up and run defense too. So I understand why he's on that roster, just kind of watching him and how he's able to hold his ground and take on doubles the way that he did. It makes more sense to me. Not necessarily a ton as a pass rusher. I'm not saying he's going to bring a ton as a pass rusher, but I'm saying his purpose as a run stuffer, he fits that very well. And Fabian Lovett, I love how quick he is in some of his pass rush and his punches. I don't know if he's going to end up on practice squad or if he has an outside chance of the 53, but there's enough there to develop and work with. So what he does in preseason games, I think, is going to answer that for me. Linebacker, I already mentioned Curtis Jacobs, so, I mean, we don't necessarily need to go down that road again. Jaden Hicks, I know I've talked about him before, but I'm talking about him again. Jaden Hicks, the way he plays football out there, the presence he has, receivers know where he's at, tight ends know where he's at, and they're keeping tabs on where he's at and deciding on some of the business decisions they may have to make about making a catch or not. And so, like, he had this one where he's isolated against Justyn Ross on Saturday's practice, and Justin's been out leaping everybody at camp because he's 6'4" and he can do that. Jaden Hicks, and it looked like it's going to be another touchdown. Jaden Hicks up against him. Jaden Hicks just reaches up, high points it, and smacks that ball out of his hands. And just nonchalant about it. Like, just not a big deal at all. So that was interesting. And then finally, the other big thing I'll say, I'm gonna talk about a sequence here real quick. It was during 7-on-7 in front of us Saturday when we're taping this thing. So on Saturday, Patrick Mahomes is doing
Friday, right?
Maybe. Oh, because Saturday was no practice, so it was Friday. Yeah, my days are blurring together anymore, man.
Tell me about it.
So Friday. So yes, Friday's practice, 7-on-7. All the other things remain the same, just the date changes. Bum, bum. No, but so like Leo Chanel deflects the football, or Mahomes is going in the back of the end zone with it. Chanel deflects the football, and then Brian Cook comes up with it. Brian Cook makes the interception, kneels down in the end zone, and then starts pointing at Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes sees it. Mahomes and Brian Cook exchange their pleasantries. Then it was funny because I see Mahomes look over a couple times while he's calling the play in the huddle, and then he goes up to the line, and then he motions the running back over to take that linebacker out of the way. I'm looking over there. I'm like, Cook's up against Wiley. I bet the ball's going to Wiley. So I was like, this is exactly, he's going to send his message that he needs to. Remember to put respect on my name. And then Mahomes throws a dart to Wiley that Wiley sends across the end zone. And it was just so funny. It was just so funny to see because like it wasn't they weren't disrespectful. They were being playful with each other. They're teammates. I know they get along, but it's like even in practice when Patrick Mahomes is going against one of his own teammates safety wise, just that little, just that okay, that's what you want to do. We'll check this out. So for the people that are doing the Kermit the Frog puppets and the NFL Top 100 and making them 4th overall, it's so dumb what you're doing. Like, I mean, we'll see what happens as the season goes on, but like, I literally the same day that the NFL Top 100 happens, I've already seen in person what happens in a practice with just a simple interception and a finger point.
Yeah, there is no reason that anybody in this league, on this team, even sometimes in a friendly practice, needs to throw any logs on the fire.
Right.
And that was the best sequence. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I personally enjoyed, and I would have a hard time, but with the Drew Tranquil Isaiah Pacheco sequence, because in pass block protection, because that was also fantastic.
And say what you need to, and I'll add on to that for a minute.
Because those two had a very spirited rep going against each other. Pacheco comes up for his second rep, and what's he do? He points to Tranquil and says, "Come out here, dude. We're going again. We're going a second time." And Tranquil did not have to be asked twice. He just ran out there. He could not wait for the opportunity. Go at it again. Pacheco wins, rips off his helmet, celebrates. I mean, that's this team in a nutshell. Those two sequences. I mean, this team is competitive as all get out. They are not afraid to do it with each other, but it's all fun and games. But man, when they're doing it with the other team, it is not fun and games.
So the funny part of that thing is like Pacheco and Tranquil had gone against each other when they had the drill the week before, I think, and like Tranquil ended up getting the best of Pacheco on that one. So, like, clearly Pacheco wanted that chance whenever they got the chance to compete again to be able to do it. And for people that don't see it, I put it on the Twitter X account that I have, and a lot of people have seen it and shared it. So, yeah, I mean, but it was funny, like you said, there was another linebacker coming up there, and I didn't say this part, but like Pacheco was like, no, I want Tranquil again. And so then that linebacker swapped out, and then it was Tranquil and him again. And then Pacheco got the best of Tranquil on that one, had a phenomenal pass protection rep, like put his passion, his intensity, everything of who he is into it. And then just, like you said, ripped off his helmet, just started roaring like a lion. And then just those little nuances, those type of things. And even like Tranquil, how hard Tranquil went a week before in some of the practice, those little things are what kind of give guys that additional energy, that additional jolt that they need in a Groundhog's Day type of style of training camp that really can kind of push it. So you're looking for those people that I like to call the fire starters, that light the fire in other people. And so Pacheco has been doing that. Tranquil's been doing that. Bolton was when he was on the field at times. And so like it's interesting to see who among the bunch can, and Chris Jones does it just because he's just pure dominant. But it's been interesting to see some of the people be fire starters on the team.
Yeah, I had some questions, Nick. I mean, one of my questions coming into this training camp was going to be about this defense in particular, with so many, of the same faces coming back. You're only losing really one starter. essentially this defensive roster is a year older, and let's face it, a lot of guys with 2 or 3 rings at minimum. So, do you lose that hunger? Do you lose that edge? I've seen zero evidence that they are losing that hunger or edge. I mean, we'll find out when they're going up against the other team and another team, and we'll see what happens. But I mean, at this point, I no longer have that concern. I mean, we'll see what happens, but at this point, I've been really impressed with what they've got going on. The one area of concern, I think we could at least maybe put it, is the cornerback spot. And I'll give it to some of the people in the organization. I mean, they saw it coming obviously before I did, because talking with someone, at the very beginning of training camp, I mean, I was just told that this team inside, they were concerned about the number 2 cornerback spot in particular, just because after McDuffie, they just hadn't seen any of these guys really claim the spot. And we've heard now Steve Spagnuolo talk about it, Nick. And I mean, Spags parsing his statement out, it really makes it sound like that they feel like that they've got a bunch of number 3 corners, but they don't have a number 2 that's just going out there and saying the job's mine. And that's been saying without seeing really any Jaylen Watson. Jaylen Watson just got back into practice. He's off the PUP list. They put a non-contact jersey off of him. That came off on Sunday. We'll see if it stays off, because that was just right. Helmets and soft pads, not a padded practice on Sunday. So we'll see if it sticks around. But that's the one spot that's still in flux, Nick. I mean, is finding out what they're going to do with that number 2 corner spot.
Yeah, and a big problem with the number 2 corner spot is how many people have continually gotten hurt whenever they've been called up. Nazeeh Johnson, he had the hamstring issue. Luckily, he was back at practice on Sunday. We'll see how that goes from there. But, I mean, they need him to be on the field to be able to prove if he can or can't be the number 2. Then Kelvin Joseph, once he got the chance, he had his injury. And, he wasn't practicing on Sunday in that one. So, you're still got the question mark there. And like you said, Jaylen Watson, we'll see if he can step up to the plate. And at the end of the day, Joshua Williams, is he going to do it? And, I mean, the other kicker is Nick Jones hasn't really kind of, I'm not trying to be mean here, but I haven't really seen a lot of highlight, a lot of things that have really stuck out with Nick Jones in practice and everything for me to be like, hey, why isn't he getting a chance? So yeah, I mean, I think that number 2 cornerback spot and then another rotational defensive end that they can rely on. Those are the 2 question marks they're going to have, that whether a guy gets waived or if there's a trade that's available, that the Chiefs are really going to have to try to figure out a way to take advantage of.
Yeah. When you were talking about the defensive line earlier, I was going to point out that, basically with the Chiefs, what they have right now is, Fabian Lovett, I would say would be the number 6 defensive tackle. He's an undrafted free agent, but high-end guy. I mean, obviously big school guy, big player. I think, hey, if that's your cut line, that's a pretty good line. Mm-hmm. I mean, right now, looking at depth-wise, Truman Jones would be your number 5 defensive end. And that's another undrafted free agent from last year, but a small school kid, really, I mean, it'd be a great story if he makes the team, but he and Fabian Lovett, I don't think are on the same level. I mean, different positions, but I don't think they're on the same level. And I think that just shows you that there's a drop-off concern. I mean, that gets a lot better if and when Charles Omenihu comes back, but that's not going to be till October or November. And then You've got to guard against other injuries. I mean, worried about that. So, Chiefs could withstand injuries along the interior, other than Chris Jones, but I don't think they could stand another injury at edge. I mean, that's the thing that they really could use some more depth, and figuring out the depth at corner would be a big part of it too. We've been talking about injuries a little bit there at corner. I mean, the big one right now, I think that's just, you would have to say is the most worrisome that the Chiefs are facing right now is Nick Bolton. I mean, they got a lot of guys back on Sunday. Wanya Morris only missed part of a practice. He came back. Nazeeh Johnson, you mentioned, is back. They're getting some guys back in there, but Nick's the one that's been out now for a few days, and that looked like kind of a nasty injury with the elbow, Nick.
My thing is, I would be more concerned if he wasn't out on the field. If he wasn't down there working out, and if he wasn't physically there and everything, I would be a lot more concerned about that situation. But the fact we see him walk down the hill on a regular basis still, and he's over there doing in workout island or whatever, rehab island or whatever you call it. Because they actually did used to call it that. So I've just stuck with it since Todd Haley days. But like the fact that we at least see him there tells me it's not something that needs surgery. Because if it needed surgery, you wouldn't see a player anywhere near the facility. They would not be walking down the hill. They'd be absent. Just like, whenever Isaiah Gathings, whenever that happened, and he had the issue, and then they waived him and brought in another tight end. And so you're like, oh, okay, that's not for them to have to do that. That's not good. That's going to take a while then, whatever he's got going on. So, yeah, that's why I'm reserving, any concern with Nick Bolton right now is because of that. Now somebody like Derek Nottie that's still for the arm injury that he had and still hasn't really been on the field yet. That one makes me a little nervous. But like all it's doing is giving Farrell and Lovett more reps to be able to kind of show that maybe Nottie can stay on PUP for a while and continue to let that injury get to a certain point, and then he just works his way back sometime after week 6 or whatever, may happen on that front. So where maybe they want to have him ready for more of a second half of run of the season versus, needing him immediately for the first 6 games of the year. And then, yeah, I don't know. Kadarius Toney getting hurt yet again, like in the ankle thing. He's not helping himself decision wise in terms of like, well, hey, it's great. He has all these tools and he's got this athletic ability, but he's always getting hurt at training camp. And that's not even in the regular season, so it just, I don't know. That's what happens when you keep trying to constantly spin and shake people whenever you're running back inside to pursuit and they hit you pretty hard. Is that because the ankle injury he had, like I saw the day before, a day before, like he caught a pass and like he tried to do his dancing and Dance Revolution, did a spin move and tried to two jukes, and then he spun again, and then a guy hit him because he wants to always go back inside to pursuit, and a guy laid him out and his foot got caught a little bit, and then he was hobbling right after it happened, and then a day or so later, he had the full ankle injury at that point. So it is what it is, man.
It is, and and with Bolton, I mean, you're right. I mean, the only thing that other than the fact that it's happened that worries me with Bolton is that it's that same left arm with the wrist injury from last year, and and he'd already been, he's been continuing to wear the brace on the wrist, fully healed, so he has said, and we've been told, but I'm sure it's just there for protection. But now you got to worry about protecting that wrist, protecting that elbow. He's wearing the sleeve on that right now. I mean, that's just the challenging thing is you don't want Nick Bolton having to play with one arm again. And that's what happened last year. So we'll see what happens. It's worth keeping an eye on. With the Hall of Fame game opener on Thursday, Nick, we got to see the new kickoff rule in place. And I think we probably saw a vanilla version of that because I think we're even seeing a vanilla version of it in St. Joseph with what the Chiefs are doing. Hey, at least it's accomplishing so far what the NFL wanted to do, which is the NFL wants returns. We'll see if that's how it looks on week 1, because I think the teams are going to be a little more adventurous when the regular season starts. But right now they're willing to just, all right, let's just kick the ball, let's force some returns, and let's play some defense and see what happens. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, with the Bears Hall of Fame game against the Texans, what I found most interesting is depending on which side of the field they kicked it to, when they were going from west to east, it was always open on the left. It was always open on the left side, and then when they were going from east to west, it was always open on the right side. And I hope I said that right. But it was really interesting. I didn't like how, for me personally, I didn't like how close everybody was together. I didn't like the 5 yards. I think I personally would prefer to see 10. I think there's less of, I just think that there's enough to let everybody set up, and there's enough that would allow them to kind of decide what they want to do in terms of coverage angles and everything. So I just think within 5 yards, I think there's going to be a ton more holding and a ton more offsides. And I think if they could push it back to where it's 10, I think that makes more sense. But I know with the 5 yards, they know there's going to be absolutely almost no collision that way, to where there could be more injuries and everything. And I get that. But, you're going from 30, 40 yards, over some guys that were on kickoff to like now everybody's 5 yards. I think that I saw windows where, from a blocking scheme perspective, just from the vanilla stuff that was out there, I saw opportunities where I'm like, Dave Toe's going to take advantage of this and this right here. They're going to have this, and I was like, and that's going to the house. But I'm telling you, like, if you have somebody with Tyreek Hill level speed, and I know that's very rare, but I'm saying in that ballpark, you could house it every play if that's how coverages are going to be. And I know they're not going to be that way. They're going to get complicated, complex, and everything. But once that happens, that's when teams start kicking to the end zone and say, forget about it. But some teams are going to need a handful of those to happen before, there's an opportunity. But I mean, there's some opportunities to take it the distance. And so I'm intrigued on that. I don't necessarily like where the refs are from time to time. Like I want to see a ref on each line. So they're directly there. And selfishly, I would prefer if, so there's a ref that's behind the kicker. I would love it if that ref is the one who keeps their hand up and then puts their hand down so the blockers know that they can finally go. And so they're focused on that ref so that ref put his hand down, I can go now. And then for the guys that are on the kickoff, I would like to see the refs that are behind the hash marks where the field goal is and everything. One of them, or even both of them, are the ones that have their hands up and drop their hands. I think that eliminates the false starts on that front if that happens. But I know there's probably 8 other things that they may be having to watch responsibility-wise, but I think that would be something that can eliminate those portions. And I think the NFL is going to take the numbers from this year, see what happens on, how many times teams kick to the end zone, how many times do they kick in this landing zone, how many times do they do this, and then I think they'll change things to where maybe it goes back to, hey, you kick in the end zone, it's at the 20, or hey, you kick in the end zone, it goes here, and try to adjust the penalties that force teams to put the ball in play. But I think they're trying to give a lot of options right now to see which path. It's like this is what my O-line coach Ken Clemens used to always tell me, and I've never forgotten it. When water is going down a hill, it will always take the path of least resistance to get to where it needs to go. And I think the NFL is doing something similar with that, to where this whole water's going down the hill. Which way does it go? Which way does it navigate? And then how do we make it tougher after that? But they'll need numbers to back that up. So for me personally, I don't know. That's just kind of what I took away from watching that. Because me, I watched every single one of them before the weather delay happened. And I watched each one like 5 times a piece, evaluating kickoff here, kick return here, the refs, where they line, what were they doing, what were they watching? Because some of them were back on each side, and then they were tossing the flag. And so, but I'm like, okay, you don't, you can see a guy move, but like you don't, without you not being on that line, just like, a guy would have been for the Kadarius Toney thing. Like you don't definitively know. And so it just, I don't know. That's an interesting part of it for me.
Yeah, and we had John Hussey and his crew in camp at the very beginning of camp, and they talked about the kickoff rule and how it's a learning process for everyone, including the officials. Right. And he seemed to suggest that, hey, there might be changes during the season, not in the rule itself, but how it's maybe reffed, how it's officiated, how it's kind of dealt with. I mean, they may make some of the changes you're talking about. They may very well make some of these because they don't know what makes the most sense. They're going to get some feedback, and especially if they're finding something that's not helping them get to where they want, which is that they want. And this is the other thing I thought was interesting when John was and his crew was in and they showed the video with this, is that it is not necessarily entirely the NFL's goal to just make the play a more active play. they want it to be even. They don't want it to, be something that just one team. They don't want it to be like the Eagles push play. They don't want this to become something that one team just absolutely crushes and is destroying the rest of the league and is impacting games. And maybe they're plus 10 points a week because on special teams because they're winning this one play. They don't want that to happen.
Right.
So, there may be some tweaks as we go during the season. We will certainly see. But I'm still under the philosophy that, because Dave Tobe said it again on Sunday. I mean, even though he said, hey, what these two teams did on Thursday night, it's kind of changed, it's along the way that his thinking has changed and evolved since the beginning of OTAs, now that they've gotten a chance to put the play into action and kind of experiment with it. But then he also says, I mean, the key to the play is getting the ball on the ground. I mean, The key is trying to make sure that the ball is on the ground and it's a free ball and it's making the returning team have to stop and to think a little bit. I mean, that's still what they want to do. So I'm still thinking that once we get to regular season, I mean, it's going to be a more squirrely play than what we're seeing right now, what we're going to see during the preseason. But let's talk about the preseason, Nick, because you will get to see the preseason, folks, and you will get to see it on
38 The Spot.
38 The Spot.
It's our sister station that we have here. So because of the Olympics are on NBC. We're having to move the Chiefs preseason game over to 38th Spot. So our pregame coverage will start Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. And then after that, then we will have the kickoff from 6 to hopefully 9. Could be longer, could be shorter. Depends how the game goes. And then you flip right back to NBC, and Olympic coverage is going on at that point. And Matt and I will have a 41 is the Mic podcast show later on and reevaluating everything after the preseason game's over. So you can look for that on Sunday morning. So yeah, there's all that. And Matt, I got one final thought that I forgot to throw in here. And then I want to talk about Matt Araiza, the punter. So watching him on Friday, the guy is a weapon. And the reason I say that is because from a football perspective is because some of the hang time he got, this is the first time I'm actually going to put out there. I didn't tweet it because I wanted to save it for the podcast. So he started doing some punts at the 50. Then they went back from the 50 a handful of times and went further back to kind of give the gunners some work, give the returners some work of seeing the spin of the ball, and then working on getting what you call the coffin corner, where you try to get it inside the 5 and have it bounce out of bounds on its own if you can. There was a couple times where he almost got to 6 seconds. And for people that don't know, I'm timing it on my phone from the time I see the football and hear that thud. From that right there is when I'm timing it until somebody touched it. And there was one that almost got to 6 seconds. And the further back, the closer they were, the higher hang time he had to where the gunners were waiting. The gunners could have read the entire Cheesecake Factory menu, done their taxes, and and planned out their vacation for next year, and still had time to catch the football. That's how much time he gave the gunners to get down there. So if you have a gunner that's doing 4.2, 4.5, they can get down there with plenty of time, and you don't have to worry about downing that. Or getting there in time and staying in bounds and keeping out of the end zone and everything. The further back they went, he was still getting on one of his 65 or 70-yard punts from where they were lined. He was still getting 4 or 5 hang time. So yes, it dropped and the distance went further, but I'm telling you, guys, most of the guys in the league that are at skill positions and gunners can run that. So he's giving them time to basically get down there and be able to make that. I just haven't seen a punter at a Chiefs camp, as long as I've been up there since 2010, have that level of hang time to where it's noticeable. And the gunners are waiting. They are there just waiting. They're not trying to get down there and make it and time it and everything. They're just waiting. They're like, all right. So how you been, man? You been doing pretty good? What's going on in your world? You don't say, oh, hey, here comes the football. I think I'm going to go catch it. And then, just catch it. So I don't know. It really stuck out to me. And I think that's something that's probably pretty underrated that isn't once you finally see it in person, like Mahomes throwing a football 80 yards to Tyreek in the opening Atlanta Falcons preseason game when he officially became the starter, until you see something like that, I think visually when people see it, I think people are going to have a big appreciation for what Ariza can do.
And I get a really interesting impression of it, because we go down usually on that last session when there's a special teams period, and so we're down on the field. They're the tent where they do the interviews, and it's a different perspective than when you're just in the stands and you're watching it. You get down the field level, and this is obviously I've been doing this since 2016. You get down there and you get to see the angles. You get to hear the football coming off the foot. You get to hear all these things and see these things. I've never seen a ball go as high as his ball. It's just absolutely amazing. And you can hearing it come off his foot, I almost feel like I feel like Art Stewart talking about Bo Jackson and the ball coming off his bat, and just what was that. It's kind of the same way. You're right. He's absolutely going to be a weapon. I thought it was very, notable too. I was asking Dave Tobe on Sunday, just, how was the finesse game about it? And, he feels very comfortable with him there too, that he's not just a boomer guy, but that he is going to be able to place the ball where they want it. Let's face it. Andy Reid is a gut coach. He's not going to go for every 4th and 3 from the 42-yard line. Every once in a while, your punter is going to have to, have a 37-yard punt that he's going to try and get down inside the 5-yard line. Dave Tobe thinks this guy can do it. I have no doubt that this guy is going to flip some fields. I have no doubt that the Chiefs are going to be punting from their own 35-yard line, and they're going to put somebody at the 2. That's going to happen this year. But, the real question will be on the finesse punts, and, I'll be impressed. I'll be impressed to see what happens and interested to see what happens during game action. It's one of the things I'm really looking forward to with these preseason games, him in particular. Yeah. Since he's only had one NFL punt in a preseason game. That was it. So.
And it was an 80-yard one.
It was exactly. It was an 80-yard punt. Big deal. No big deal. So just one of the many things you're going to get to see on 38 The Spot. And if you are in one of those situations where your cable provider does not have 38 The Spot, you should do what I do anyway, which is I watch it. If I'm at home for any of these Chiefs games, I watch them on my antenna so I don't have the 50-second delay on streaming. And Nick, my office TV is hooked up to rabbit ears. I don't even have, one of the fancy digital crazy. Yeah.
Same.
Old rabbit ears will do it. So
same. That's what I got too on TV in my bedroom,
and it works great. So don't forget, that's where you will be able to find the game this weekend. And obviously, for KSHB, you'll get to be able to find some Olympics. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, nothing but sports for you that Saturday night.
There you go. Any other takeaways? Anything else on your mind, Nick? Anything you need to get off your chest?
I'll probably think about more during our Q&A. But you and I have had long Sunday, so okay at this point. If we save some stuff for people to ask on Tuesday and go from there. I apologize to any players that may have had some notable things that I remembered the day of and tweeted out, and right now I'm just drawing a blank.
See, there you go back. You could look at our Twitter X feeds for anything else that you may have missed. But more importantly, you have any questions, join us Tuesday night when we have our live stream at 7 p.m. for the Chiefs Digest YouTube channel. Answer any questions you got there, so fire them away at us. As always, we appreciate it if you can leave a review. 5-star review would be great, but help other people find the podcast.
And retweet it. Retweet it on Twitter or
repost, share
yourself on your Instagram, wherever, Facebook, LinkedIn, or
hit the bell on YouTube, all those things to get your notifications. You have named it. Any of those things, we appreciate you being able to make sure that not only you can find the podcast yourself, but help others discover it as well. We truly appreciate that. So with that, Nick, we will see you Tuesday night for the live stream, and then of course back here next really Saturday night. Sunday morning we'll be coming to you with the podcast right after the game, so we'll get that up to you as quickly as possible after the Chiefs face the Jaguars Saturday night.
Until next time, I bid you adieu.
You've been listening to 41 is the Mic, presented by KSHB 41, your home of the Chiefs, and Chiefs Digest.